Legend has it that Jason saw his mother beheaded that night. Then he took his revenge, a revenge he continued to seek if anyone ever enters his wilderness again. Today's review, a long overdue review. We're going to be having a look at the new NECA toys. This is the Ultimate Friday the 13th Part 2, Jason Voorhees. Before we unmask Jason Voorhees, let's figure out how tall the figure stands. We'll put the tape measure next to him. He is exactly 7.5 inches in height. For his accessories, he does come included with his pitchfork. Some of the accessories, I will admit, like the pitchfork, for example, is a little on the thin side. There's not really much you could do about it just by the nature of the fact that it's plastic, and because it's super thin, it is a little on the soft side. Well, it's not soft to the sense that you can bend and warp it, but if you bend it, certainly it will break. I'm throwing that out there, as you will have to fit this through his hands, and it's a little, I don't want to say tricky, but if you are putting it in his hands, for example, the best advice I could give you is pry away the fingers as best you can get it, and then feed this through. You don't want to start pushing it into the hand, just for fear that that could break. Just kind of FYI. The pitchfork does look rather nice. All of them have a certain level of degree of rust and wear and tear to them. The pitchfork here is no exception. It does look really nice. Like I said, they've painted some little bit of rusting, and even put like the little riveted areas here in which the handle would have been attached to the actual wood post here. Looks really super cool. He also gets himself a spear. Again, cast in what looks to be a brown plastic, and then they just painted the silver tip. All these little notches all along from the top to the bottom of it. Again, really nice piece that you're probably going to want to display him with. I'll likely think I'm going to be moving a little bit more towards the country of the pitchfork if I'm going to be displaying him with it. I just kind of picture him more so just running with the pitchfork in hand. Don't worry as well, he does have a lot more bludgeoning tools in which he can dispense revenge for the death of his mother. He's got, of course, a pitchfork as well. I kind of do my best, certainly as a reviewer, to look at these pieces and think to myself, for a manufacturer, what else could they do? Let's play the game of what else could they do with these things. Well, the pitchfork and the spear, maybe not maybe excluding those pieces, but at the very least, if they ever did themselves down the road a Valentine's Day massacre, My Bloody Valentine, they could easily have used this pitchfork maybe for a future release, just FYI. I would love to see a My Bloody Valentine release. Oh, that would be so great. But in the meantime, we're going to have a look here at the pitchfork, which does have some little wear and tear. The one end looks like it's been scratched away metal. The other end looks like it's been bludgeoning into somebody's body. Very, very cool. And of course, the handle itself is in a brown plastic. You've got a little bit of the blood trickling its way down. I keep thinking of My Bloody Valentine. I'm trying to actually even think of the name of the character, and that's why I didn't say it at the beginning of that statement. It's going to come to me. I know it's going to come to me. Leave it with me. I'll keep thinking about it. Really nice looking pitchfork, though. Another good contender for something you could display the figure with. We'll put that to the side. Also comes included with a curved machete with a slightly curved tip. Again, neat touch is that you've got the wear away areas of the metal, and then you've got the blood over top of it. The blood, to their credit, they made it translucent or slightly see-through, so you can actually see it over top. Of course, if the old way of doing it, painting it simply just a dark red paint over top of the plastic, this gives it the sense that it looks a little bit more like a realistic blood. And it looks really cool. I like that. You're also going to see there's a couple of little rivets there holding the handle portion into the blade itself. Put that to the side. And then he also comes included with a knife, something I wanted to talk about in a second, so remind me to do so. Again, you've got the area in which the metal looks like it's kind of been slightly scratched. You've got the rivets there also, in which the handle has been. These little small details. It's the care, the little care that NECA puts into their pieces. Although it does look like there's a little bit of a gap between the one side of the handle and the blade. I actually thought it was a cast piece of plastic, and then they've just gone in and painted it. But it almost does look like, I don't know if that's intentional, that the two halves of the handle are something that are separate from one another. I didn't know that. This knife would also get some mileage if they would attach it with future Michael Myers releases, which I am super excited and thrilled for. SDCC now just wrapping up, and they of course have released images of Ultimate Michael Myers from the new Halloween. I'm so excited for that because that also will open the door for Ultimate Michael Myers from the different movies, which I so happen to have mentioned many years ago that they should get themselves the Halloween property. I'm glad they finally did it. It was like 11 years later they finally got the licensing for the Halloween films. I'm going to put that to the side. Just talking a whole bunch of horror. It's a good time really to be a horror fan. Then of course for the heads, we've got ourselves the head of Pamela Voorhees. The severed stump of Pamela Voorhees, which is making a reappearance from the NES Jason. This would have been cast in, or painted, I should say, rather, in a blue plastic. And, of course, got some colorful details there. Here we get a much more realistic paint scheme. Unfortunately, and this is one disappointing end of it, I sold so many of my horror figures years ago. I would have loved to have done a comparison between the Jason here from Part 2 and the original Cult Classics Jason. Same thing for the big display piece that would have had Pamela's head on top of it. All of it gone, all of it so sadly parted. I really regret I gave away all that stuff. Anyways, so here we have Pamela Voorhees' head, really decayed looking head. Not much in the way of paint. It almost kind of looks like tree bark, by the way. It's been decayed and almost mummified, really. Really nice looking head sculpt. Not really much you can do with it because there's really not a display piece for it. There's not something you could sit her head on top of, but you could probably have it just to the side of Jason. And then last but certainly not least, a reveal to the very end of Part 2. I'm sure by now everybody has seen the movie. We have a very ugly looking Jason, taking some cues, rather many cues, from the original surprise ending of Part 1, where young Jason would splash out of the water. The slightly misaligned Shannon Doherty face has carried over here. In fact, is that Shannon Doherty? No, it's not Shannon Doherty. That's really mean. The hair sculpt draping only to the one side, leaving slightly more of a bald end on the one side here. Definitely does look like Jason from the end of Part 2. This is really the only time that we see Jason like this. And I guess really from the entire franchise, this is the only time we really see Jason as a bearded Jason with long hair. We get slightly little indications of that with the later films, but more just strands of hair than anything else. Here we have a full lock of hair here, and slightly a little bit of a balding area. You can just really see the level of detail and care that NECA would have put into their figure releases. Okay, so we'll put that over there. Harry Warden. There we go. Somebody right now is typing down below Harry Warden. I'm sorry to beat you to the punch. Anyways, here we have Jason Voorhees. Just a cue back to Harry Warden. I'd love to see an ultimate Harry Warden figure. That would be so very cool. Anyways, let's have a look at Jason. My apologies again for the delay in getting this review done. Simply just in case I was waiting for this to be shipped to my house. I had to actually order this online. And sadly, the comic book stores just didn't get them right away. Needless to say, here we have Jason Voorhees. Now let's play the game of what can this else be? I'm thinking of this right away as Farmer Vincent Smith from Motel Hell. Really, ideally, the body is exactly the same. A pair of coveralls and, of course, the plaid shirt. This could easily be Farmer Vincent Smith. I don't know if I don't know if NECA Toys would ever entertain the idea of doing a Motel Hell release. At the very least, they could do Vincent on his own and then just give him the 2 alternate heads, the big pig head and then his regular farmer head. But really, ideally, the body is exactly the same. I'm going to have to call NECA afterwards. Yeah, I don't really have NECA's phone number, but NECA, if you are watching, certainly you can make use of this mold. I know companies are certainly all about reusing molds. This could easily be Motel Hell, just FYI. Anyways, let's have a look at his face. We'll work our way down. They've definitely nailed the face. How ridiculous does that sound as a reviewer for me to say that? Because clearly there's no face to be said here. It's really instead just a sack. One of my favorite actually looks for Jason Voorhees, and I'm like the fact that the remake also played cues to the fact that at one point he would have had the sack. Here he has the one visible eye. The other eye would be, well, it would be, it's so mean. It would be down here, right around here, just like Shannon Doherty. The face, as little as you can see of it, at least at the very least, they painted in the eye. And it looks like they almost intentionally put a large level of reflection off of the eye instead of, I don't think his eye is supposed to be that white. As you can see right here, the eye is drastically different, as it would be 2 different actors playing the role. The eye is, though, very drastically different between the 2. But I do kind of like that the eye is as white as it is. Does give it that sense that there is lamplight shining down on him as I just again picture that one scene where he's running through and you can only see like the odd lighting hitting him on the side as he's running through the pathway chasing the one girl. Paint is generous, more so in the sense that it's been heavily dirtied up here. The texturing to the actual hood is really nicely done. And of course you've got the roping that's tying that all off, keeping it in place anywhere until, of course, we want to take the head off and replace it with the other Jason head. As for the rest of his body, Vincent, just thinking, FYI, the body consists of really a plaid outfit, a plaid shirt, and a pair of course, coveralls. The coveralls are very nicely done in the sense that one thing I do like is that when you move the torso is a separate component altogether than the coveralls. The coveralls are a little on the softer plastic variety, which of course comes with that the risk that the 2 things that you wouldn't want to break on coveralls would be these 2 strappings here, because they are of a softer plastic and because, well, they aren't really attached to much other than, well, really not even to the straps. I mean, the straps you can remove from the shoulders, so a little bit of caution. You definitely don't want those definitely breaking on you. They've even sewn in the back little patch on the very back, although there's nothing really there. It's just a white patch. The stitch work is very nicely done. Apparently Jason Voorhees has been sitting somewhere because there's excess levels of dirt around the buttocks area and more dirt further down around the lower cuffs of the legs. Doesn't really make a whole much of an appearance here, but it gets really dirty from basically like the knees down, which would make perfect sense. Boots, again, very nicely sculpted. You got a little bit of dirt on the undersoles as well as the back of the heel. And again, it's a really well put together figure. I've been really anxiously waiting for this figure for years. Never really thought that they would go further past the point of the hockey mask Jason, and clearly the proof is in the pudding. It is very nicely presented here. So let's go ahead and take his head off, the ball joint here. One thing I do also credit NECA for doing is switching out the peg system from going from a larger ball joint to more this cylindrical ball joint instead. With the very small nub on the end, it makes for changing the heads a whole lot easier. We'll just go ahead and put the head on there. It does involve, I will admit, a little bit of extra pressure. Just wiggle, 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 wiggle. Pop that into place. And with the head in place, this is what you get for Jason. Again, it's probably not a preferred look by many, as really Jason only has this appearance, this look, for roughly about 30 seconds at the very end of the film. But again, it's nice that you would have 2 different head options. Again, here's the hood option, so you can see the differencing between the 2. Entertaining, of course, the idea that you may want to get more than one of these, simply so that you can have Jason displayed in as many different forms. You sneaky NECA. You always rope us in. You rope me in, certainly, because I would consider getting more than one of these, so I can display Jason with both the hood and non-hood versions. Just a little FYI, however, if you go ahead and take the head back off, I just want to show you the interior of the head. Now, I had to do a little bit of surgical work on the interior of the head. I did notice that there was a couple of layers of very thin plastic covering over the ball socket hole here. That may be for everybody, maybe yours would be perfectly fine, but I did have to do a little bit of work to get that head back onto the peg here. It wasn't this clean initially. I had to do a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of doctor work there. I'm going to go ahead and put this head back on because really this is the ideal look for me. And there you have Jason Voorhees once again with the hood, the mask in place. Let's go ahead and run through his posability, shall we? His head rotates all the way around. That would kill him. And hinges up and down. Shoulders hinge outward as well. You can rotate the hand or the arm all the way around. He's got a bend at the elbow. You know the drill by now. This rotates all the way around. You can rotate the hand all the way around. That hinges back and forth. Torso, little sketchy. Little sketchy. I'm not going to do this too often because I don't want these breaking on me. Now, somebody who says you're a worrywart, don't worry so much about that. Well, I just want to bring it to your attention that they are separate. I guess I am happy, though, that NECA did make these completely loose, because if they had, say, glued these right here and only added this much wiggle, it could have broke, because there would have been this glued up at the top. You know where I'm going with this. There wouldn't have been enough clearance. So I'm glad that they did keep this 100% detached from the torso. So that is a little less. If you're going to make it a separate piece, at the very least, it's not going to allow these straps to break, hopefully, unless you're really crazy excessive with it. This, by the way, of course, as you could probably guess it, all soft plastic leading down to the waist. That's where the socket sits. And then after the socket of the lower waist area gets to us the legs. The legs go forward. The legs go back. The legs go out. That's how legs work. Bend at the knee. You can rotate the lower leg. And lastly, of course, you've got ankle pivot, hinge back and forth, and to some extent, you could rotate the feet all the way around. I don't know why you would want to do that, but if that's something that you'd like to do in your spare time with action figures, you can pull it off here with Friday the 13th Part 2 Ultimate Jason Voorhees. One last thing I almost failed to include in this review is the fact that Jason Voorhees also comes with a campfire. Could you imagine if I had left that out in this review? Somebody would have said, what happened to the campfire? What happened to the campfire would have screamed the villagers. The campfire, yes, is included, and it does look spectacular. I love the fact that you've got the outer area here made up of smaller stones, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but the under area right underneath the logs, as well as around the outer area, or the interior area, I should say, of the stones, it has a slightly red tint. You can also include, or they also include, a fire attachment which can go over top of the logs. There's a specific way in which it does do it. It has to be lined up. Let me see if I can actually get it going here. There we go. You have to take this long log, that's right, and it fits right over top of the area in which it kind of looks like the middle finger. That just clips right on top like so, and you've got bingo bango, you've got yourself a campfire attachment. Let me tell you this, brothers. Let me just say that I do love the fact that NECA included this campfire, and I can only hope that future Jason figure releases, or Freddy Krueger releases, or any Ultimate figures, I hope they include small accessories like this that you can then add to the bigger diorama. Of course, we've already got ourselves the Camp Crystal Lake set, then consists of the dock pier as well as the sign. Now you can add the campfire along with this. Now, imagining, if you will, every Jason Voorhees future release does come with something a little bit extra, maybe like an oar, maybe part of a canoe, something like that you can continue to add, maybe like little side logs. I love the fact that I'm essentially building Camp Crystal Lake from the bottom to the top, and now we can go ahead and add the campfire to that, which I almost forgot. This Jason meets all my requirements for what I would expect from an ultimate Jason Voorhees, and once again proves that NECA is the king when it comes to horror figure releases, or really figures in general. Yes, I've been anxiously awaiting this Jason Voorhees to be released for years now, ever since owning the original Cult Classics, which I do shed a tear from time to time to think that I did part ways with that figure so many years ago. Kind of wish I could have had it right now in this figure review, so we could have looked at some comparisons. Of course, there is a night and day comparison that could have been made, proving that the ultimate Jason Voorhees is definitely worth the time and the money to pick up, because it is an excellent upgrade to the original NECA Cult Classics release. This figure, I don't think I would have changed anything to it. I do remember, however, the one thing I wanted to mention during this review, and I forgot all about it. It would have been nice as a little small touch, and I know it's something I could easily add myself, is if they had added the black nail to Jason's hand, like we would have saw at the very beginning of the film. A little small touch, something that NECA had overlooked, but a nice touch that they could have also included, but I could easily just do that with a little bit of marker. I love this figure, and I love the fact that, once again, this being an ultimate figure release, you get lots of accessories and interchangeable heads. My go-to, of course, for the head is the sack Jason, but it's nice to include also the unmasked Jason, so it gives you some options, and definitely the more entertaining reasoning why you would want to pick up a second figure. So you can display it with the mask, you can display Jason with the very hairy Shannon Doherty face instead. So mean. Today, finally, we were having a look. I know it took so long, and I apologize for that, guys. Today, we were having a look at the NECA Cult Classics. This was the Friday 13th Part 2, Jason Voorhees, with Pitchfork in hand. Harry Warden, I remembered it. If you guys haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. We're going to have some more video and horror figure reviews coming your way, because I know you guys like your horror figure reviews. Lots coming your way on this channel. And as always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do. I'll see you next time.